The human exploration mission was supposed to be a routine one. A group of astronauts had landed on a distant planet in search of new resources and possible allies. Their ship, the Endeavour, was equipped with advanced technology and a team of skilled scientists and soldiers. But when they ventured into a dark, dense forest on the planet's surface, they stumbled upon something unexpected. A hidden facility, well guarded and filled with strange, unfamiliar technology. Jason, the team leader, led his crew through the thick trees. His eyes were sharp, always scanning the horizon. He had been on many missions, but something about this planet felt different. As they approached a clearing, they saw a large building tucked behind the trees. The structure looked abandoned, but there was a sense of mystery about it that kept Jason on high alert. "Stay close and keep your comms on," Jason said, his voice steady. His team nodded, following closely behind as they crept toward the entrance of the facility. Inside, they discovered rows of cells, each one holding children, human children. Their eyes were wide with fear, their faces pale, and their hands pressed against the cold metal bars. The team froze in shock. It wasn't just the presence of the children that startled them. It was the realization that they were on an alien planet, surrounded by beings that were far more advanced than they were. "Who would do this?" one of the soldiers whispered, his voice tinged with disbelief. Jason's eyes scanned the room, noticing strange markings on the walls. The facility was old, but it was still operational. A chill ran down his spine as he realized the children weren't just being held, they were being studied. His mind raced. Why would aliens capture human children? And why here, on a far-off planet? They had no answers, only questions. As Jason moved toward one of the cells, he noticed a strange energy source in the corner of the room. It hummed softly, almost like a heartbeat. He reached out and touched the device. The instant his fingers made contact, a bright light flashed, and the sound of footsteps echoed down the corridor. "Someone's coming," whispered Jason, his heart pounding. The team quickly retreated into the shadows, hiding in the darkness as the sound grew louder. Footsteps, alien voices, something was happening, and Jason had a terrible feeling they had just uncovered a secret they weren't supposed to know. The door to the facility opened, and in walked a group of aliens, their eyes glowing with an eerie green hue. They seemed to be in charge, moving with purpose as they checked the children's cells, speaking in a language Jason couldn't understand. It didn't take long for him to realize that these aliens were not just keeping the children locked away. They were studying them, experimenting on them. Jason felt a surge of anger. This wasn't just an exploration mission anymore. It was a rescue mission. As the alien soldiers left, Jason gathered his team and spoke quietly. "We need to get those kids out of here. Now." But little did they know, the discovery they had made was about to ignite a much bigger conflict. These aliens weren't just interested in human children. They would do anything to keep their secrets hidden, and they would kill to protect them. The clock was ticking. The team had no time to waste. The human children had been taken from their homes without warning. It wasn't just one or two children. There were many. Their families, in the middle of their normal lives, had no idea that their worlds were about to change forever. The children were from different cities, different backgrounds, all unknowingly linked by a shared fate. They were taken under the cover of darkness, abducted by unknown forces from a planet far away. It had all started a few weeks earlier when reports of strange disappearances began to flood in. First, it was a single child missing, and then others began to vanish at an alarming rate. News outlets and authorities tried to cover it up, calling it a series of unfortunate accidents. But families, desperate for answers, knew something was wrong. It wasn't until Jason's team discovered the hidden facility that the truth began to surface. The children were being kept in sterile, cold cells, isolated from one another. They had no understanding of why they were there, only that they were scared. They were kept in complete darkness for long hours, with only the occasional sound of alien voices to break the silence. Many of them had stopped speaking. too afraid to make a sound. As they sat quietly in their cells, one child, a young girl named Emily, tried to make sense of it all. She was only 7, but her sharp eyes had noticed something strange. The aliens watching them didn't seem like the ones who had brought them here. They looked confused, almost as if they weren't part of the original plan. Emily, despite her fear, had started to believe that someone out there might want to help them. She just had to find a way to reach them. Meanwhile, Jason's team had started their mission to find the children. They knew they were running out of time. The human military was on standby, ready to take action at a moment's notice. But Jason wasn't willing to risk an all-out battle. He needed to act quickly, get the kids out without alerting the entire alien empire to their presence. They had no idea how many alien forces were on the planet or what kind of retaliation they might face. Jason's thoughts were interrupted by the crackling sound of a radio. A familiar voice came through. "Jason, we've pinpointed the location. It's in a facility just outside the northern mountains. We can't be sure how many of them are guarding the children, but we've seen strange ships nearby. It's a trap. We need to be ready." Jason's heart sank. He had known it wouldn't be easy, but now the stakes were even higher. It wasn't just about rescuing the children. It was about fighting a war they hadn't started. They were up against a powerful enemy, one who had no mercy for humans. Back in the facility, Emily had made a small breakthrough. She'd noticed one of the guards, a nervous-looking alien, had forgotten to lock the door to her cell. Quietly, she pushed the door open and crept into the hallway. She knew she had to move fast, but where could she go? She wasn't sure if there was anyone out there who could help, but Emily had hope. For the first time since her capture, she believed there might be a way out. As she ventured deeper into the facility, she heard the sound of footsteps approaching. She froze, her heart pounding in her chest. Would she be caught before anyone could save her? Or could this small act of courage turn the tide in their favor? The clock was ticking, and the children's future was uncertain. But one thing was clear. The human team would stop at nothing to bring them home. As the sun set on the distant planet, Jason and his team huddled together, their faces tense with worry. They had learned that the alien empire was vast and powerful, but what they didn't know was how deep the corruption ran. The human military was on standby, but the team was aware that any direct assault on the facility would be a suicide mission. They needed allies, someone who knew the alien empire from the inside. Just as they were about to give up hope, a voice crackled through the static on their comms. "You're not alone." It was Lyra, the leader of a small resistance group that had been quietly working against the alien empire for years. Jason's eyes widened. He had heard rumors of alien resistance movements, but he never thought they would find him so quickly. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice cautious but hopeful. "We're the ones the Empire doesn't want you to find. We've been watching the facility for months. We know who's holding the children," Lyra replied. "And we know they won't give them up without a fight." Jason felt a surge of relief. Allies, even ones from within the alien empire, were exactly what they needed. Lyra's group had infiltrated various parts of the alien empire and had gathered valuable information, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. If they were going to succeed, it had to be together. Lyra's voice grew more urgent as she explained the situation. "The children's abilities, they're not ordinary. We've learned that the Empire believes the children can unlock a power beyond their control. That's why they've been capturing them. The children aren't just victims. They're key to something much bigger." Jason clenched his fists. His team had suspected that the children were more important than they appeared, but the idea that they were part of a larger, more dangerous plan was terrifying. "We need to move fast. Then, we can't let them keep those kids any longer." Lyra agreed. "We've been tracking the movements of the alien forces. There's a small window of opportunity before they relocate the children to a more secure facility. You'll have only a few hours to make your move." Jason turned to his team, all of whom were now focused and determined. They knew what they had to do. The plan was risky, but it was their only chance. We can't let the Empire get its hands on those children. We're going in. As they prepared to leave, one of Lyra's scouts arrived. The alien resistance members were skilled and well-trained, but they were few in number. The scout, a tall alien with silver skin, handed Jason a device. "This will help you locate the children," the scout said. "It's a tracker. It can get you inside the facility undetected." Jason nodded, feeling the weight of the mission settle on his shoulders. They couldn't afford any mistakes. The lives of the children and their future were on the line. As the team moved into position, Jason looked over at Lyra. "You'll stay here and monitor the situation. If anything goes wrong, we'll need you to help us get out." Lyra's eyes sparkled with quiet confidence. "I'll be here. You just focus on getting those kids." The team set off, their hearts pounding with the knowledge that they were about to step into the lion's den. But with new allies, hope began to spark where it had once been dim. Together, they would fight to free the children and perhaps change the fate of the galaxy itself. As Jason and his team moved closer to the facility, their hearts raced. They knew that time was running out. Lyra's intel was clear. The children were being moved to a more secure location, and if they didn't act quickly, they could lose their chance. But there was something more important than just rescuing the children, a secret that was starting to unravel. The team had arrived at the outskirts of the facility. The moonlight barely pierced through the dense clouds, casting long shadows across the ground. The alien facility loomed before them like a dark giant. It was surrounded by high walls and armed guards, but Jason's team was well prepared. They had a way in, thanks to the tracker Lyra's group had given them. They moved swiftly, sticking to the shadows and avoiding detection. The tracker beeped softly, guiding them toward the children's location. As they approached the heavily guarded section of the facility, Jason's comms crackled with an unexpected message from Lyra. "Jason," her voice was filled with urgency, "we've discovered something big. The children, there's more to them than you think. They're not just victims. They're part of an ancient experiment. The aliens believe that if they unlock their potential, these children could give them access to an energy source far beyond anything we've seen." Jason froze for a moment, his mind racing. "What do you mean? Energy source?" Lyra continued. "The Empire's leaders have been searching for a way to harness this power for years. They believe it's linked to the children's genetic makeup. If they can control it, they'll be unstoppable. The children, your children, are more important than you realize." Jason's grip tightened on his weapon. It wasn't just about saving innocent lives anymore. The children had become the key to a larger, terrifying plan. The stakes had grown higher, and failure was no longer an option. "Got it," Jason whispered, signaling his team to move forward. They reached the main door of the facility, and with one swift motion, Jason cracked it open, letting them slip inside. The building was quiet, but there was a palpable sense of tension in the air. They moved through the dark corridors, following the tracker. The closer they got, the more they realized just how high the stakes were. The alien forces guarding the children seemed more focused than ever, and Jason couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. But there was no turning back now. Finally, they reached the holding cells. Jason's heart pounded in his chest as he saw the children, locked away in small, sterile rooms. Their faces were pale, and their eyes were wide with fear, but there was something else, something strange about their expressions. They seemed to be waiting for something, as if they knew they were about to be freed. Jason stepped forward, his hand reaching for the control panel to unlock the cells. But just as he was about to press the button, he felt a sudden, cold chill sweep through the room. The walls seemed to hum with energy, and a low, rumbling sound echoed from deep within the facility. It was then that Jason realized the facility wasn't just holding the children. It was feeding off their energy. He quickly turned to his team. "We need to hurry. Something is about to happen." As he spoke, The ground beneath their feet trembled, and a bright light flooded the room. The children began to glow, their bodies pulsing with an otherworldly power. Jason and his team stood in shock, realizing the truth. The children weren't just the Empire's prisoners. They were its greatest weapon. And now, they had to stop the Empire from unleashing this power on the galaxy. The light from the children's bodies grew brighter, almost blinding, as the room hummed with energy. Jason and his team stood frozen, unable to move as they witnessed the unimaginable. The children, whose lives they had come to rescue, were no longer just victims. They were the source of power the aliens had been desperately trying to harness. Jason's mind raced. The energy radiating from the children was unlike anything he had ever seen. Raw, untapped power. The aliens hadn't just captured the children. They had been trying to manipulate and control this strange energy. Now it seemed as if the children themselves were somehow awakening to their full potential. The facility, designed to hold them, was now trembling under the pressure of the power building inside it. "Get them out. Now," Jason shouted, breaking the stunned silence that had fallen over his team. His voice cut through the tension like a knife. The team rushed to the children's cells, but as Jason approached the control panel, a loud alarm blared through the building. Red lights flashed, casting an eerie glow over the walls. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed in the hallway outside, growing louder by the second. "They know we're here," said one of the soldiers, his voice tight with fear. "We need to move now." But before they could act, a new voice rang out, sharp and commanding. "Stop right there." A group of alien soldiers appeared at the end of the corridor, their weapons drawn and aimed directly at Jason and his team. They were taller than humans, their green skin glowing under the red emergency lights. The soldiers moved with precision, their eyes narrowed in fury. Jason's grip tightened on his weapon. They were outnumbered, but they had no choice. They had to fight their way out if they were going to save the children. He signaled to his team to prepare for a fight. "This is it," Jason muttered to himself. "We fight or die." The alien soldiers shouted commands in a language Jason couldn't understand, but it was clear they weren't going to let the humans leave without a battle. The tension in the air was thick, as if the entire building was holding its breath. Suddenly, the children's glowing bodies flared brighter, almost as if responding to the danger surrounding them. The air crackled with energy, and for a moment, everything seemed to pause. Jason watched in disbelief as one of the children, a young boy with dark hair, extended his hand toward the alien soldiers. The soldiers faltered, their faces showing confusion. It was as if they had never seen anything like this before. The boy's energy surged, and a shockwave rippled through the room, knocking the soldiers off their feet. Jason's eyes widened. The children weren't just sources of power, they were beginning to fight back. "That's our chance," Jason shouted. "Move, now." With the alien soldiers disoriented, Jason and his team sprinted toward the cells. They quickly unlocked the doors, ushering the children out as the building continued to shake with the force of their powers. But just as they thought they had a chance to escape, a deep, powerful voice rang out from behind them. "You think you can escape, human?" The voice was cold, filled with malice. Jason turned to see an imposing figure standing in the doorway. An alien queen, her eyes glowing with an intense, terrifying power. She stepped forward, her presence commanding and filled with rage. "You've taken what is mine," she hissed. Jason's heart pounded in his chest. The battle was far from over. The queen's power was unlike anything he had ever felt before, but he refused to back down. "We won't stop," Jason said, his voice steady despite the fear bubbling inside him. "You can't control these children anymore." The queen's lips curled into a cruel smile. "We'll see about that." And with that, the real battle began. The tension in the air was unbearable as the alien queen stepped forward, her gaze fixed on Jason. Her eyes shimmered with power, glowing in the dim light of the facility. The children, still surrounded by a strange, pulsing energy, looked terrified but also strangely calm, as if they understood what was at stake. Jason could feel the weight of the moment. He had come here to rescue these children, but now, the situation had become far more dangerous. The Queen wasn't just guarding the children. She was determined to stop anyone who dared challenge her control over them. "Move!" Jason shouted to his team, snapping out of his stunned silence. They had no time to waste. With the Queen blocking their escape route, they had to fight their way out. The team quickly took defensive positions, weapons drawn, but the Queen simply laughed. It wasn't the laughter of someone amused. It was the cold, confident laugh of a predator. "You think your weapons will stop me?" The Queen's voice was sharp, filled with disdain. "I have more power in my little finger than you could ever dream of." Jason's soldiers hesitated, but Jason shook his head, determined. "We'll see about that." The Queen raised her hand, and the air seemed to crackle with energy. A pulse of light shot out from her fingertips, striking the floor in front of them. The shockwave knocked the team off their feet, sending them crashing to the ground. Jason gritted his teeth and scrambled to his feet. "Get up. We can't stop now." The children, still glowing with the energy that had awakened inside them, seemed to respond to the Queen's power. One by one, their eyes locked onto her, their small faces filled with fear and defiance. It was as if the children knew that they were the key to ending the Queen's reign of terror. The young boy who had first used his power reached out again, this time his hand glowing with an even brighter light. A pulse of energy shot out from his fingertips, hitting the Queen directly in her chest. The Queen recoiled, her expression turning from confident to enraged. "You dare," she growled, taking a step forward. Jason, using the distraction, rallied his team. "Now, we've got to get them out of here." With weapons raised, they fired at the Queen, but her energy shield blocked their shots effortlessly. Jason's heart sank. They were no match for her power. But the children, there was something about the children's energy that Jason couldn't ignore. He had seen it before, the way they seemed to control the pulse of light, the way their power was in tune with the facility itself. They weren't just innocent prisoners. They were the heart of this facility, the key to shutting it down. "Do it now," Jason shouted. "Use their power." The soldiers quickly moved into position around the children, trying to shield them from the Queen's attacks. As they did, the children began to glow brighter than ever before, their power rising in a way Jason had never seen. Suddenly, the entire building trembled as the children's energy reached its peak. The Queen screamed in fury, but it was too late. The children's combined power shot out in a blinding burst of light, engulfing the Queen and the entire facility. For a moment, everything was silent. The shockwave of energy had knocked the alien Queen back, sending her flying into the walls. But it didn't kill her. Jason knew the Queen would rise again, but now they had a chance to escape. "Let's go," Jason ordered, grabbing one of the children by the hand and pulling them toward the exit. The building shook violently as alarms blared and lights flickered. They had to move fast. Jason could feel the ground trembling beneath them as they ran toward the exit, the children's power still pulsating in the air around them. The Queen, though weakened, wasn't finished. As they reached the door, Jason glanced back to see her pushing herself off the ground, her eyes filled with fury. But for the first time, Jason felt a spark of hope. The children were more than just hostages. They were the ones who could bring the Empire to its knees. With the Queen on their tail, the team pushed forward, the escape now more urgent than ever. But Jason knew that this was only the beginning. The real battle for the galaxy was only just starting. The facility was crumbling around them as Jason and his team ran, the walls shaking with every step they took. The blaring alarms were deafening, but they pushed forward, driven by the urgency to escape with the children. The power in the building had become unstable, a result of the massive burst of energy the children had unleashed. Jason's mind raced. This wasn't just about saving lives anymore. It was about stopping the Empire from using the children as a weapon that could destroy entire worlds. Behind them, They could hear the sound of the Queen's voice, cold and filled with wrath. "You cannot run forever, human. I will have what is mine." Jason's heart pounded in his chest as he glanced over his shoulder. The Queen was struggling to rise to her feet, but her power was still immense. They were barely out of her reach, but he knew that would not last long. "Keep moving," he shouted to his team, urgency in his voice. "We can't let her catch us." The children, still glowing with energy, walked quietly beside the team, their eyes wide and fearful, but also filled with determination. Jason had seen the way the children's energy had nearly destroyed the Queen, but he wasn't sure they could keep it up for long. They needed to find a way out, and fast. As they reached the exit doors, the building trembled once more, as if protesting their escape. Jason forced the doors open, and the team poured out into the night air. But just as they thought they had made it to safety, a blast of energy struck the ground just in front of them, sending them tumbling backward. The Queen had followed them outside, her eyes burning with anger. She was more powerful than ever, fueled by her fury. But as she stepped forward, something unexpected happened. The children, still filled with that strange energy, suddenly stopped walking. They turned as one toward the Queen, their faces calm and focused. The energy that had once been chaotic and wild seemed to stabilize, forming a powerful shield around them. The Queen hesitated, her eyes narrowing as she realized what was happening. "No, you can't control it. You're just children." But Jason knew the truth now. The children were not just victims. They had been awakened to their full potential, and in that moment, they were more powerful than the Queen ever could have imagined. The young boy with dark hair stepped forward, his eyes fixed on the Queen. The glow around him intensified, and his hand reached out. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. The air crackled with energy, and the Queen's expression turned from one of anger to something darker. "Fear. You have no idea what you've awakened," the Queen hissed, her voice shaking with a mix of rage and terror. "You cannot defeat me." But the children's power surged again, pushing the Queen back, step by step. Jason could see the shock on her face as she realized she was losing control of the situation. The children weren't just a source of power, they were the key to ending her reign. Jason's team, now regrouped and ready, took action. They fired at the Queen, distracting her long enough for the children's power to grow even stronger. The Queen stumbled, struggling to maintain her balance, as the children's combined energy overwhelmed her. The Queen roared, a cry of frustration and defeat, but it was too late. The children's power had broken her hold on the facility, and with it, her control over the galaxy's fate. As the Queen collapsed, Jason's team rushed to the children's side. They were exhausted, their bodies still glowing with the power they had unleashed. Jason knelt down beside the young boy, who was now panting, sweat dripping from his forehead. "You did it," Jason said, his voice filled with awe. The boy looked up at him, a small, tired smile on his face. "We did it," he said quietly, his voice filled with relief. Jason nodded, understanding the weight of what they had accomplished. They had defeated the Queen and stopped the Empire from using the children as weapons. But this was just the beginning. The galaxy was in chaos, and the children's role in the future was still uncertain. As the first rays of dawn broke through the darkness, Jason knew that their fight was far from over. But for now, they had won. The children were safe, and they had shown the galaxy that humanity would never back down. The silence after the Queen's fall was deafening. The crackling energy in the air slowly faded as the last remnants of power from the children's bodies flickered out. The once terrifying Queen now lay motionless on the ground, defeated and broken. Her reign of terror was over. Jason stood still for a moment, catching his breath. His heart was still racing from the fight. They had won, but at what cost? The building was crumbling around them, and though they had defeated the Queen, the damage had been done. The galaxy was now aware that humans weren't just helpless victims. They were capable of standing up to the might of the alien empire. Jason couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of something much bigger. "We need to get out of here," Jason said, his voice low but firm. His team nodded, and they quickly began to move toward the exit. The children, still shaken from the ordeal, followed quietly behind. They were exhausted, their small faces filled with a mixture of fear and relief. Jason couldn't help but feel a deep sense of protectiveness toward them. They had been through so much, and yet they had been the ones to save everyone. As they stepped outside, the cold night air hit them, a sharp contrast to the chaos they had just escaped. The distant sounds of the crumbling facility echoed in the background, a reminder of the destruction they had caused. But there was no time to dwell on it. They had to get back to safety, and fast. Jason activated his comms. "This is Jason. We need immediate extraction. We've secured the children, but we're not alone. I repeat, we are not alone." The response came quickly. "Copy that, Jason. Hold tight. We're on our way." Jason let out a breath of relief. They were almost there, but even as he spoke, a nagging thought lingered in the back of his mind. The alien empire wasn't going to let this go. The Queen's defeat was just one battle, and Jason knew that the war was far from over. The team moved swiftly toward their ship, which was waiting just outside the facility. As they reached it, one of the soldiers stopped, looking back at the planet behind them. "What happens now?" the soldier asked quietly, his voice filled with uncertainty. Jason paused, taking in the sight of the planet, now free from the Queen's control. The future was uncertain. They had won this fight, but the alien empire was vast, and they would retaliate. And then there was the question of the children. Their power had saved them, but what would happen to them now? They weren't just the key to stopping the alien empire. They were a symbol of hope for a galaxy that had long been under the thumb of tyranny. "We keep moving forward," Jason said, his voice steady. "We'll protect the children, and we'll make sure the empire never threatens anyone again. This isn't over. Not by a long shot." The ship's engines hummed to life, and the crew began to board. The children were safely escorted aboard, their faces still full of fear, but also a sense of relief. They had been saved, but the galaxy was a dangerous place. Jason promised himself that they wouldn't have to face it alone. As the ship took off and the planet slowly disappeared behind them, Jason looked out at the stars ahead. This victory had been hard won, but it was just the beginning. There was a whole universe out there, and it was time for humanity to take its place among the stars. The stars outside the ship's windows stretched endlessly, a sea of shining points against the vast blackness of space. Jason sat in the pilot's seat, his fingers lightly brushing the controls. The mission was over, at least the first part of it, but he knew their fight was far from finished. The children were safe for now, but the galaxy had just witnessed humanity's strength. The question was, what would they do with this newfound power? Behind him, the crew was settling in. The children had been given quarters, though their eyes still carried the weight of everything they'd been through. They were quiet, each one lost in their own thoughts, as though they were still processing the chaos of the last few hours. Jason couldn't blame them. He, too, was grappling with the enormity of the events that had unfolded. A soft voice broke through his thoughts. It was Lyra, the leader of the alien resistance group who had helped them. She stepped into the cockpit, her eyes reflecting a quiet understanding of what Jason was going through. "You did well," Lyra said, her voice calm but full of respect. "The children are safe, and the Queen is no longer a threat." Jason nodded, but there was no joy in his expression. "It doesn't feel like a victory," he admitted. "We've stopped one part of the empire, but there's still so much more to do. We're not out of danger yet." Lyra walked over to the window, looking out at the stars. "The galaxy is a complicated place. There are many factions, and not all of them will be happy with what happened today. But you've shown them something important. Humanity isn't weak. You're not just survivors. You're a force to be reckoned with." Jason looked at her, feeling the weight of her words. It was true that the humans had managed to take down one of the most powerful beings in the Empire, but there were still enemies out there. Powerful enemies who would seek revenge for the Queen's fall. The ship's comms beeped, pulling Jason's attention away. It was a message from the human military. "Jason, this is command. We've been monitoring the situation. We're sending reinforcements to your location. We need to talk about next steps. You've done something extraordinary, but we're going to need a solid plan for the future." Jason exhaled slowly. "Understood, Command. We'll be ready." Lyra gave him a small smile. "It seems like you're about to face another challenge." Jason returned her smile, though it was tinged with weariness. "One challenge at a time," he said. "Right now, I need to focus on keeping these kids safe." Lyra's expression softened, her gaze turning to the children. "They're stronger than you think," she said. "They've only just begun to understand their power. They could change the galaxy for the better if they choose to." Jason thought about that for a moment. The children had been through so much, and yet they had shown a strength that even the Queen hadn't expected. Their potential was limitless. But what would they do with it? What kind of future would they build? "We'll protect them," Jason said firmly. "We'll help them understand what they're capable of." Lyra nodded in agreement. "That's the best you can do. They're not just the future of this planet. They're the future of the galaxy." Jason looked out at the stars once more, the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. He had promised to protect the children, and he would. But now, more than ever, he realized the role humanity had to play in this larger universe. They had taken the first step toward a new era, one where they could stand alongside the most powerful forces in the galaxy. And no matter the challenges ahead, Jason knew one thing for sure: humanity would never back down. They had proven that today. As the ship continued its journey through the stars, Jason allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection. The battle had been won, but the war was just beginning. The galaxy was vast, and their place in it was yet to be fully written. But they had the strength to shape their future. And with the children by their side, they had hope. The journey back to Earth felt long, the hum of the ship's engines the only sound filling the quiet cabin. Jason stood at the window, looking out at the vastness of space. His mind was still processing everything that had happened. They had saved the children, defeated the Queen, and struck a blow to the alien empire. Yet in some ways, it felt like they were just beginning. As the ship neared Earth, Jason knew things would never be the same. The galaxy had watched as humanity had taken a stand, not just as victims, but as warriors. The children, now safe aboard the ship, had changed the game completely. Their power had been unexpected, and with it came a heavy responsibility. Jason turned away from the window as one of the soldiers entered the room. "Commander, we're approaching Earth's atmosphere. The military's awaiting our arrival. They're eager to hear your report." Jason nodded, though his thoughts were elsewhere. The humans had won a battle, but the war was far from over. The Empire would not forget this defeat. Other factions would rise, and they would want to retaliate. What mattered now was how humanity would respond. They had the strength, the courage, and most importantly, the hope to face whatever came next. The soldier left, and Jason sat back in his chair, his mind drifting to the children. They were still resting, but Jason could see the change in them. The fear that had clouded their faces when they first arrived had begun to fade. They weren't just survivors anymore. They were warriors in their own right. And their power was only just beginning to be understood. What would happen if they fully unlocked their potential? Would they be able to bring peace, or would they become a force for destruction? Jason couldn't say for sure, but one thing was certain. He would be there to guide them, to help them find their path. Earth in sight, came the voice of the ship's navigator over the comms. "We're entering the atmosphere. Brace for landing." Jason stood up, taking a deep breath. The mission wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Earth had to prepare for the coming storm. The children, who had once been nothing more than captives, had the potential to change everything. It was time for humanity to step into its new role as more than just survivors. They would be the protectors, the ones who stood against the darkness. The ship landed smoothly on the military base. As the hatch opened, Jason was met by a line of military officers, all standing in formal attention. Their faces were serious, but Jason could see the respect in their eyes. They had just witnessed the birth of something new, something they couldn't yet fully comprehend. "Commander, we've been following your mission closely. We're impressed with the results," one officer said, stepping forward. "But we need to know what comes next." Jason looked around at his team, and then at the children who had begun to step off the ship. They were still adjusting to the reality of what had happened, but Jason knew they were ready. "What comes next is up to us," he said firmly. "We've shown that humanity isn't weak. We have the power to protect ourselves, and to protect those who can't protect themselves. This is the beginning of a new era, one where we stand together as equals with the rest of the galaxy. But we will never forget what it cost to get here." The officer nodded. "Then let's make sure we're ready for whatever comes next." Jason watched as the children, now surrounded by military personnel, looked up at the sky. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, Jason felt something he hadn't felt before: hope. The galaxy would not define them anymore. Humanity would define itself. And with that, Jason knew they were ready to face whatever challenges awaited them, together.